All right. Hi, everyone. So this is Plasma call number 5. I think this call is going to be a little bit more chill, probably because of daylight savings and not telling people what time it was. Everybody all over the world with different times. So I figured today's call is probably going to be more technical than our usual calls, or at least like more crypto economical. Wow, that was a really crappy joke. That wasn't a joke. In this call, we're bringing on Dan Robinson. Are you at the Chain's office right now, or is it?
Yeah. This is Chain's New York office, which is just me. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I assume it's like a WeWork or something.
Yep.
Looks like a WeWork.
Yeah.
And then I guess today we could talk about like notions of information availability, i.e., Plasma Cash, and there's a lot of discussion on ETH research about that. So I figured today we could just focus on that. Why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think I guess to sort of like kick off the thinking, I don't know. I think there's like a narrative thread, right? Like I think a couple weeks ago, I was thinking a lot about like the CryptoKitty stuff, or like a couple weeks ago, and then how to do that via like counterparty style. Dan made a separate thread about, along a similar vein with like a lot of narratives about, retaining a certain like UTXO slots and things like that. And I think Vitalik, you've integrated and developed on a lot of the ideas that we're talking about. And I think there's a pretty fundamental shift in thinking. If this thinking about this a little bit more, I think it's possible that a lot of the problems are solved, right? If you do it this way, it's just sort of well,
that fixed it.
Yeah, that fixed it. So I don't want to overly editorialize and bias it towards a certain topic today, but I think it'd be fairly interesting if everybody here is familiar with that development, right, in this call. I figure maybe we should give a summary later on, but I'm too excited. So I think if you allow for splitting within a single output, I think that's doable. Basically, you just split the allocate the amount, and you can only rejoin it along the same depth, basically, and you have both agreements to do that. So you have splitting with one and then rejoining with one. Let's say you add it long term, and then you add in HTLCs and channel nonsense type stuff, and then you could that way you could have whether it be done in the Plasma chain or off chain, but assuming it's done similar to a cross chain atomic swap, you can basically do whatever you need to do at that point.
Yeah. So can you do? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know.
You're gonna say.
Is it possible to do HTLCs on a Plasma chain, and particularly on a Plasma Cash chain, because you don't have any guarantee that the chain operator is going to make a transaction available to you? You don't have a proof of publication, is what I'm saying. And because the chain operator can censor a
Right. Yeah, so censorship is always a problem, I think, right? I think essentially if a transaction is censored, you still probably need longer timeouts, unless you wanted to do it off-chain. But I'm presuming that you can issue a withdrawal request on-chain if you get censored. I'm always willing to basically make the assumption that the root chain is not being censored beyond crypto economic incentives.
Right,
on an individual basis, non-cartel presumptions, right?
Right. So I see.
Because, I mean, if there is, it's sort of like game over.
Okay, what about availability though? So if someone if you have the pre-image reveal be on the Plasma Cache chain. So suppose you extend Plasma Cache's scripting system so it supports time locks and hash locks, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have the pre-image reveal on the Plasma Cache chain, there's no guarantee that that pre-image reveal will make it to the other party, right?
There's no guarantee that
that the operator will make that available to everyone.
Yes. So the presumption would be that the sender gives it directly to the recipient, and it's presumed that the recipient only accepts it if the operator includes it on a block, or if the recipient really wants it, then they try to withdraw on chain.
So, but what if? Okay.
So basically, if the sender sends it and refuses to provide the data, and like it's included in a block, and the sender refuses to include it, the recipient refuses to recognize that payment.
Yeah. And so, hold on. So let's say that we're trying to do a like hash time lock cross-chain atomic swap between two Plasma or Plasma Cache chains. I think it might be the same problem. And let's say in both chains, you would start off by putting the coin into like a hash time lock or 2 of 2 thing. Then you would, let's say, basically the intention is that one party reveals a secret, and that's the only way for that party to get the coin. But then by doing so, they allow the corresponding party to get the corresponding coin. So suppose then that the first party basically uses unlocks the hash preimage, it uses the hash preimage to transfer a coin in the first Plasma chain. Then let's say the Plasma chain operator is colluding, and basically and creates a block and to include the transaction, and this block is unavailable. Then
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
You would. So I guess there's two things that could happen, right? You could maybe lock it to, what if you locked it to a commitment in the, basically some type of action that the chain operator publishes and commits to. And if they withdraw, you can penalty free like assert a state or something like that.
All right, so the first side commits to some on-chain action? Like
in the first side, so you would need, it's probably like, you probably need 2 locks on there where you commit to a reveal, like of a pre-image, and some type of lock that gets unlocked by the chain operator. I'm running through this mentally right now, so I don't have like a clean answer to you.
Yeah.
So if you did that, and then let's say it was colluding, let's say Bob and let's say I don't know, Oscar, the operator. Let's say this is a POA type dynamic. So it's like B and Bob and Oscar collude to withhold the block states going forward. Withdraw. Let's say Alice was a sender, so Alice tries to withdraw a prior state and then this updated state. So you probably need recognition of states. So it's a little bit like, who did the multi-party, like what was it? Where if you had a channel, you can like accelerate it by like, or like have synchronized states by publishing the hash image, and then it affects all the channels. What?
Are you doing Andrew or?
Sprite? Yeah, Andrew's thing. Yeah, sprites. Yeah, sprites. Okay, cool. Yeah. So you could do construction like that. I don't know. I'm totally spitballing here. But like if you said, okay, we're doing the sprites like construction, and then it's conditional upon state that's relatively to be synchronized in that way, I think that works, but I could be wrong. That's something to think about. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, maybe it'll work just to try if you you reveal the hash to them, and then you could just try withdrawing your you just would try withdrawing it, and that's just going to force them to challenge your withdrawal with the transaction that's revealing the premium issue.
Makes sense.
But this and like a lot of other, it's making me think that there's this and there's maybe a few other ways that you can force someone to try to withdraw. In this case, with the collusion of the chain operator, so maybe that's not as big a deal because the chain operator can always do that. But okay, so maybe it's not a big deal because chain operator can always force you to withdraw. So it might work out there.
Yeah, I think it's like reasonably. So I'm always against. The reason I'm I'm uncomfortable with this is that and even the one suggesting it is because generally if you're doing a withdrawal request and there's no bond and penalty attached to it, you're kind of always going to optimistically try to get as much as you can. So that part is tricky.
You're saying that you have to put a bond on withdrawal, and therefore anything where you're gonna force someone to make an invalid withdrawal is a problem.
No, I'm saying that is true, but I'm saying the penalty. You can't enforce a penalty based on, let's say you're Alice, you sent to Bob, and then let's say you wanted to optimistically withdraw what you sent to Bob. There can't be a penalty attached in this specific instance under this specific design is because if there's a penalty attached to it, then if there's information withholding, Alice can get penalized.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe the trade-offs that I'd be willing to accept at least would be if the chain operator is working against you, then you might be forced to make an invalid withdrawal or pay a penalty. But it shouldn't be possible that just a user working against you can force you to make an invalid withdrawal.
Yeah. I think that's the case.
Yeah, but that I don't want to necessarily move off this topic, but that brings me to another concern I had about confirmed signatures, which was if you try to do atomic transactions just on a single Plasma Cash chain or on a single MVP chain. I'm not sure exactly how this works. What happens if you only get a confirmed signature? If like Alice and Bob sign a single transaction, and you figure out however what data structures you use for that. But if Alice provides her confirmed signature, but Bob doesn't, and Bob has Alice's, Bob now has this free option. If Alice tries to withdraw, Alice can't withdraw. Alice can't complete the transaction because she doesn't have Bob's confirmed signature. But if she tries to withdraw, Alice can and Bob can penalize her, can challenge that by revealing her confirmed signature and his, and using it as a challenge, using that transaction as a challenge. So what worries me about that is that doesn't involve any malfeasance by the chain operator.
Yeah,
that's just one party on it who can grief another into making an invalid withdrawal attempt.
Sorry, how do you grief someone that way?
I'm assuming there's some way to do a transaction, and this would be if you wanted to do a trade on the Plasma Cash chain where Alice is trading one asset, or maybe just change.
So even just think like a simple MVP chain, and you have two inputs and two outputs, and one input belongs to Alice and Bob, and another input belongs to Alice and output. Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And the outputs are switched.
It's like the last signer type dynamic.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me worried about having confirmed signatures at all, because that gives if you don't have confirmed signatures, and just as soon as it's included in the chain, then it's considered valid. Then the chain operator can force you to make an invalid withdrawal attempt, but your counterparty can't. So maybe that's a better trade-off.
How does the chain operator able to?
There's a few tricks they can do. Like that's.
Oh yeah.
Invalid in-flight transactions and block with various things we were talking about on the thread. But yeah.
Yeah, but provided that they have as long as the transaction is included and you have a commitment of that, you're sort of good to go even if your counterparty does something stupid as an input, right?
Well, if you need confirmed signatures from both inputs, then the transaction will post, but you still have to wait for your counterparty to give you that confirmed signature.
Yeah, but it'll still post, right?
Yeah, but if it posts and doesn't have a confirmed signature, you can't spend it.
Right. But you're sort of not screwed over yet because you don't treat it as finalized until like it's been confirmed.
Right, but if you try to withdraw your money, the other party can reveal their confirmed signature, and it's a valid transaction and challenge your withdrawal.
Oh, you have to wait until a timeout, of some kind.
I mean, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can do something with a timeout there. I'm not sure. I think if you do it with a timeout though, you're going to have the same problem, just another step back. Like you're attempting to withdraw from the timeout. At that point, you'll have that problem. Well, maybe not. I'm not sure actually. Maybe timeouts can solve it.
Yeah, this is interesting because I think thinking about it this way is very, very new to us all. So I think it's like taking at least me a little bit longer to be able to reason about this properly.
Right.
You guys have the same problem?
All of this is new to me. So.
Right? This is like taking a while to reason about.
Well, I think it's because we're used to proof of publication being just like a given, and I think we should be I think we shouldn't think of in Plasma Cash the default being that blocks are public and that it's malfeasance by the operator to withhold anything. I think typically blocks should be private. Like I think for privacy, it's best if the operator doesn't reveal anything to anyone who doesn't have a right to it. But in that case, so like you have to make a specific request to the chain operator to get some particular piece of data. And that means it's not necessarily possible for you to prove like to the public. It won't necessarily be publicly known if somebody starts withholding some pieces of information. So
I think the presumption is people could like sound the alarm though.
People could sound, but then you get like a fisherman attack, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the main things that Vitalik and I have been thinking about is definitely this like block withholding, and can you recover a plasma chain once there is a withheld block? And it is definitely a tricky problem because you do have this kind of like fisherman's dilemma, or you have you have to have like some kind of like forking mechanism, or it's like horrible, which then you would lose finality on if your transaction got included. So it's really not super fun. And by the way, I actually one of your questions, Dan, was is there like a Plasma Cash specification outside of the thing? And I just released a blog post actually that has a kind of reasonably full specification and talks about this. And
it's great.
Oh, cool. Can you post it?
Awesome.
Yeah, let me link real quick.
Can you link to it?
Nice.
I'm happy with the image on the top.
Spending exits. Oh wow, there's diagrams. What do you use to make this diagram? It's so colorful, nice.
Yeah, block withholding is not fun, and so it would be really cool though if we could somehow recover from a withheld block, because then these plasma chains can like live forever. They can be like undead, and you know.
Well, the nice thing about Plasma Cash, I think, is that people don't have to
withdraw immediately.
Right, until never have to withdraw, actually.
Yes.
And they don't have to do anything until there's an actually attempted invalid withdrawal of their coin, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like you can hold your money in a dead plasma chain for as long as you like, basically.
Yeah, and that helps certain types of systemic attacks issues because you could just chill, while everyone else is like panicking.
Right. The rush to the exits problem is not as.
Yeah. The reason I really I'm super excited about this Plasma Cash construction is because it basically overwhelmingly mitigates a lot. Basically, a systemic attack issue is presuming honest miners and non-adversarial cartels, right? So if you assume that there's not a 51% cartel, because at that point you're sort of screwed anyway. If you presume there isn't a 51% cartel, you basically make it so that any withdrawal has sufficient bonded funds to prepay the transaction fee penalty. And you, when me and JJ were proposing like the Bitcoin extension block, there's a parameter to basically solve. I think basically I wouldn't use the word solve, but like it overwhelmingly mitigates the issues related to that type of systemic attack. You basically make it so that you prepay for, any potential disputes, like the maximum size of any type of dispute chain. You prepay for that, and then just get on ETH. You can make like a contract, refund you the difference if there is no dispute, kind of thing. And that way, by prepaying for it, you're basically good to go. It's a minor tweak on prepaying it. You basically make it so that you have an open slot. So imagine if the function call was to do a withdrawal. You bond it so that like there's sufficient funds available to pay for any fees of disputes. But the way you actually do that is you have an open byte range data that you prepay for that allows for the maximum size dispute for anyone else. So it's like this giant dispute pool that people can like malleate this like giant blob of data in to be disputes for any other transaction within this contract. And that way you have this, like, if there's mass exit flood, there's always more room for disputes, dispute resolution, because that way you sort of like have space available to just shove in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You just have extra data that you just like, the miner can just include. So you might need a separate protocol for that. And like this kind of punts the problem to like transaction selection, which is like kind of messy code already, and it would make it way messier, but it's like doable.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So the nice thing about the Plasma Cash construction is that you're constraining it to something very specific. So that way you can do this iterated game and basically prepay for it, which I see it as effectively resolving the primary concerns around this type of design.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Like you just individually prepay for the exit and then you're good to go,
Yeah, I totally. It would be lovely though. It would be so amazing if we could somehow, after a period of dormancy, just like resurrect those locked coins, and please, anyone watching this and everyone here, like think about this and tell me why either it can happen or why it's impossible.
Wait, what do you mean?
Oh, just is it possible to resurrect these coins without going on chain? And if it is,
oh yeah,
and if it isn't, then like tell me why.
Yeah, okay. So you can punt the problems in multiple ways. You can do this nesting, right, that we've been talking about before, where you nest the POA chains or whatever PLS chains or whatever it may be. And that way you have a different set of participants. But that requires a lot of work. So basically what you want is if there is no proof of a certain kind of refresh or something like that, you could set some type of time delay where you basically change the set of which chain you're supposed to follow. So you actually you can construct, I'm not recommending this because it doesn't actually solve the problem necessarily, but you could basically punt the chain to another chain after a certain time.
After another certain time of what?
After, like, basically when you when you do the deposit, you say after a year, the chain operator is now like Carol.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't solve the problem completely though.
Yeah.
That won't solve the unavailable data from that block though. like the new, you can change it, you can switch out who the chain operator is, but that isn't going to resurrect the dead block, which could at any time come back and like be a landmine, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm presuming, I'm presuming halting and not withholding. Withholding, I'm basically presuming that like, I don't know what the solution is. Yeah.
Yeah, you can have some kind of like consensus amongst coin holders that a block is unavailable, but even that is like.
Yeah, so like the one idea that I came up with is that you can have the plasma coin holders make some kind of collective threshold signature. And if they do that, basically they would make a threshold signature claiming that the most recent plasma block is like bad or unavailable. And if they do that, they can cancel that block and immediately switch the plasma operator to someone else.
So the issue with that is that let's say you set even an extremely high threshold, let's say 80%, right? You could basically like scam people out of money.
No, you can't. So the only other condition that it imposes on users is that users have to wait for 2 confirmations instead of 1, because the most recent block can always get annihilated.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the presumption is that it is, okay, that's an important difference. So if you did that, then effectively what would happen is they would submit, if it's withheld. Okay, let's move on. I need like 1 more minute to think about this so you guys can.
And then we can do arbitrary depth forks and then
just the knives and chopsticks.
The knives and dows.
What?
There is knife in Chinese. It's a classic Vitalik code.
Huh? Let's do it.
But yeah.
Wouldn't it slow down the time amount of confirmation?
Okay. Sorry, I'm slow. It's a morning for me. Okay. So yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, another thing that I'm curious about is
sorry. I think Janti was saying something.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so basically, if you wait for 2 confirmation of a plasma block, as Vitalik said, user has to wait for but the longer time than usual Ethereum block time.
Yeah. You can solve that in other ways.
As a user interface or UX, it's very it's bad, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can also have like kind of state channels open or some kind of like trust in the operator, to kind of just, I think my transaction is going to go through and like zero confirm it or something. But
well, also I think before you invalidate the block, you can allow anyone who actually does have the data for their coin to declare it.
You can
Right. So if you have a confirmation, I think you're safe. Because as long as you got a big difference for these sort of.
Well, you might. The issue that I was concerned is you might not be safe because if someone, so if someone double signed it, then, what if someone quadruple signed it and tried to send it to 4 different people, and basically there's no resolution of that double spend via commitment? Someone has to get it. Oh no, because you don't treat it as confirmed as the recipient until you see it committed, I guess, in terms of that.
Yeah, so if you
then you're done. Then
if you have a commitment for that block, then you can just prove that to the parent.
Yeah, so you can defend it,
So what is our thinking currently on confirmed signatures or confirmed pre-images, which I think is a pretty good, is sort of a good idea, or was a good idea for solving this issue, but that I think actually, I think it actually will end up causing more problems than it solves, because it fixes some problems against the chain operator, but makes it makes it hard to do atomic trades safely.
Oh, you're talking about a confirmation signature? For
Yeah. Do you need is a transaction invalid until you have the approval of the sender?
Not on the plasma chain.
Oh, right.
I mean plasma cash chain, sorry.
Yeah.
Not on the plasma chain. Basically,
I think like it's safe to declare now that like Plasma Cash is Plasma.
It's got the but yeah, it solves that problem. Thank goodness. That was one of the big. The two main things were the like sharded client side verification and removing confirms. And then there's a bunch, like the mass exit mitigation. Actually, there's a full list in the doc.
Oh, in which doc?
In the specification. I just kind of like at the beginning list off.
Yeah.
Something that I do really want to like think about is an evaluation of how compact history. This is something that I'm really super interested in for like actually implementing this. It's like what is first, how fast does the history grow for a particular coin, and just like have a number for that, and like second, can we make it more compact?
Yeah, so like I feel like keeping it compact, one can be like, so I have certain engineering biases. It's pretty obvious which ones they are now, but effectively, if you allow like splitting of coins, like a sub bucket, if you will, then if you're willing to have a couple counterparties, then you can always basically split it in such a way which is pretty clean, that doesn't create too many like little sharded pieces. And at that point, you can be running, like an on-chain network of HTLCs to be able to make a payment or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did that, at that point, you're responsible for your own long chain of payments. So you don't need to keep track of too much data. It's like the person like running that, payment network, they only need to keep the data which is relevant to themselves, the chain history to themselves. And then you just make a contingent payment. And like, it could be that in some like chains that like the chain operator is very, very well funded, and they're willing to be the counterparty to like basically like they double up on the liquidity, and then like they're good to go kind of thing. That's a very hacky solution. That's not like capital efficient, but that's an example of something that could work pretty trivially if you're willing to like throw money at the problem.
Yeah, I think I really want to like define those coin splits, because that would be super important. And then the ability to withdraw rebundle them in some ways, and then withdraw larger denomination.
So the issue with rebundling is if any leaf refuses to do bundling, it basically breaks the bundling.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fine.
One thing I think is possible is actually like reshuffling the indices.
Yes.
Like if a Plasma operator agrees that this is the new permutation of the indices and publishes it, and like it could even publish it in the right Merkle tree format, so it just basically says like add the old leaf of the Merkle tree is the new index, then I think you can totally just like make the indices change to whatever you want, and then if someone wants to merge two coins together, you could just basically reshuffle and make the indices be right beside each other.
But then you have an information availability issue again, though, right? If you do that?
No, because as a user, the thing that you need to know is like basically the history of your coin. And but the fact that the specific Merkle branch you have to check like changes over time doesn't really matter.
I think it might, because if you have this very nice property that you don't even have to watch the plasma chain to keep your coin safe. You just have to watch the main chain for any withdrawal of your coin. So unless the reshuffling.
Okay, hold on. So the index of the coin can remain the same if you wanted to, but like I'm basically saying that you can basically merge coins whose indices are not adjacent with each other, and then
how do you do that safely with a withholding attack? You didn't even know it was merged together, though.
what merging basically means, right, is that you can have a transaction and that transaction can have multiple parents. So then if you want to prove that some transaction can exit, then you basically just need the complete history of all the parents. And then like if you want to give that to a third party, then you basically also need the kind of the history with the old indices in the middle to show that there's not a double spend.
But what if there is one and it's withheld? No. Basically, what if the reshuffling is withheld? And then
yeah, this is definitely the difficult. But
Yeah,
I feel
like,
like there is a way. I feel like there is a way.
I think we shouldn't be talking anything about like what if something is withheld. I think by default everything is withheld.
No. But if there's shuffling,
sorry.
I'm presuming that if there's shuffling and the shuffling is withheld.
Then
but I'm saying
everyone should exit before the shuffling, unless there's a transaction that's in flight during a shuffling and then it lands after.
Right. Well, no, it's fine if it lands. Actually, that's weird. That is weird. Anyway, well, then I have no idea how to do that. Well, then it'll just be an invalid transaction, won't it?
No, so if it lands after, yeah, you could do that, right? Like, you could basically just say, when you send a transaction, like you basically specify what is the most recent like shuffling block, and then if it lands after a shuffling, it just is not valid.
Actually, I think as long as a shuffling is noted on the parent chain, which just says like this is a shuffling block, then you as a plasma coin holder don't have, you can still just do what I was saying is just watch the Ethereum blockchain and you don't have to actually maintain a connection and keep checking on the receiving stuff from the Plasma Cash chain, because like you'll just when you see that there's a shuffling, you'll go to the operator and ask for, hey, tell me where my coin is now.
Yeah.
So I guess that's that.
I see the trade-off. Okay, so the trade-off being made is if you do the shuffling, there's a possibility that someone doesn't see the state transition. And if they don't see the state transition, then, okay, so let's say Alice sends to Bob. And what happens is that there's a shuffling in between. Let's say Alice sends to Bob and then there's a shuffling. Okay, the timing doesn't matter when the send happens. There's a shuffling. When there's a shuffling, any sends prior to the shuffling, presume is known. Presume the shuffling is withheld. In the event that the shuffling is withheld and colluded with Bob, if Alice didn't send to Bob, if Bob can't produce a signature, then Bob can't receive the funds, in terms of like Alice can always run a dispute, right? Alice can always dispute anything in the future. Like if Bob just colludes with the operator to say, hey, the fund's mine now, right? Then any subsequent data post-shuffling, there could be a situation where you have to basically publish that there was a shuffling after this date.
Yeah.
And
which could be fine.
You might have to provide the Merkle proof of that shuffled state. Basically,
parent chain?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think if you publish all the data about, right, if you publish all the data about the shuffling to the parent chain, then you're fine.
Yeah, but you get no efficiency gain at that point.
No, look, I mean, I think that it should be sufficient to publish only the portion of the shuffling permutation specific to each user to that user.
But what?
But there is a chance that in a challenge you're going to have to publish that data though, that proof of the shuffling.
Not of the entire shuffling, just of your piece of the shuffling.
No, because post shuffling, the allocate, right? So if the slot numbers are different and you don't know which ones you're spending, so you need to say that.
Well, okay, so you definitely don't spend any coin that landed post shuffle unless you know everything, including the shuffle.
Sorry. I'm talking about withdrawal. Sorry. I'm talking about withdrawal. Yeah. So when you do a withdrawal,
so when you withdraw, you would withdraw the coin from before the shuffle.
Right. That means there's a chance that you need to prove that you own that coin, which means that
no. So here's how you do it, right? So let's say you have coin A, Then coin A, we'll say it had a spend, but the spend landed after a shuffle, and that created coin B, and there might have been holding going on. Then coin A can withdraw. In order to challenge the withdrawal of coin A, the owner of B has to provide two pieces of information. The first piece of information is the Merkle proof of the shuffle, and the second piece of information.
Oh yeah, that's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're in agreement. Okay.
But I think you do have to have a limit on the size of a shuffle, because then otherwise the plasma chain operator can force a mass rush to the exits, right? If they do a shuffle and withhold it.
No, if they do a shuffle and
No, there's no timing constraints.
No one will spend coins, and then they'll just like wait until he wants to exit.
Wait, sorry, what's that?
Like if the mechanism for responding to a withheld shuffle is the same as the mechanism for responding to withheld anything else, right? You just don't do anything with your coins until you want to do something, and when you do something, then you exit instead of like trying to act inside the plasma chain.
But when you try to challenge that, they'll show, look, it was shuffled and now it's here. I guess right. So I see. I guess you're
no,
saying,
because Alice didn't send them. If Alice didn't send the money to Bob, and the money didn't move post shuffle, then Alice's money is still there.
Yeah, but if the shuffle moved Alice's money, but Alice doesn't know where it went, then what is she going to challenge? What withdrawal? Like, how does she notice?
Oh, she doesn't need to challenge anything. There's not going to be any. Basically, what happens is because you need to provide anytime you do a withdrawal post shuffle, you have to provide proof of the shuffle.
Yeah.
Oh, you
like
do.
Branch proof.
Okay.
That's what Alex just said.
Okay, so you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but then you have to.
What I'm saying is that whenever you do a withdrawal of a coin, yeah, basically whenever you do a withdrawal of a coin, that's right after a shuffle. Yeah.
But if it's like miles after that shuffle, they're gonna have to reveal.
I see. Basically, what if like the shuffle was? Okay, hold on. So first of all, when a coin gets spent after a shuffle, like whoever spends it is implicitly assuming that at least they think the shuffle worked out fine, right?
Well, yeah, but if suppose that's the chain operator spending someone else's coin.
No, you can't.
No, they can't do that.
Then you like send a transaction, and correctly sign it.
Maybe I'm not understanding how who has to authorize a shuffle? Is it just the operator?
Yeah. But it just has like one option.
So right, so like that. What worries me about the shuffle is that's like after the shuffle, you're gonna have to prove not just that you at this moment in time are the holder of a coin. You also have to prove who it belonged to pre-shuffle, so that person has notice, so they can challenge your transaction.
Well, okay, so, I see. So basically, if you're saying what happens if you try to make a totally invalid spend and then claim that totally invalid spend came from some coin, but then you claim there was a shuffle, but actually there wasn't a shuffle, but the shuffle was withheld, so you can't prove.
Right.
Okay, right. I understand.
Oh, so this runs along a separate narrative thread. I feel like this reasonably resolves it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a notion of a presumption of periodic liveness with a lot of these constructions, right? Mm-hmm. If there's a presumption of periodic liveness, usually the presumption is that you have to periodically watch the challenge, right? Mm-hmm. Another way to do periodic liveness is that you have to sign periodically to update your state to the most current state. And if you don't periodically sign, so presume you have to sign every shuffle, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. If you refuse to sign, your coins get left and basically left over into like this locked box, which is a previous state, and everybody else moved on. It's sort of like you just keep like forking periodically, and everyone gets left over is just left over in the separate bucket. And then that way, you make it so that in order to participate in a new shuffled state, you have to sign off on it, and the new shuffle state gets locked in with the operator basically including these signatures that you do want to go into this new shuffled state. And when you do that, what that gets you is that effectively you've now committed to be in this new shuffled state. And that way that solves a lot of those problems, I think.
Are those signatures published to the main chain?
No.
You know what I'm saying? So if I don't see how that solves it then, because if you've got like you had a shuffle at some point in history, and just years down the line, someone tries to spend your coin, you didn't consent to the shuffle, but like there's no way to prove that without tracing the coin all the way back.
No. So what this possibly gets you, this solves something, but I can't articulate it yet. But if you do it this way, I think, and that's a really like crappy thing to say. I'm sorry. Like I'll get back to you on exactly what that is, because I think this is all very new to all of us. I think, but like for me, I'm a little bit slow with this right now. So what I think this gets you is if you ensure that the parties do agree to go joining the new shuffle, then you as the operator can arrange you arrange it so that the transactions are grouped together, and after that you can join them up. You're essentially coordinating, you run an interactive game to coordinate where to shuffle to, and you're basically making commitments pre-shuffle on where you want the money to go. And that way you're effectively just doing a lot of transactions to move things between each other. Well, that's not really shuffling then, is it?
Yeah, yeah. And I think also anytime you move, it's like moving coins. Actually, moving coins is literally just a trade, right?
Yeah. Just a transaction, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you're right. So actually, what you could do instead of shuffling the like location of these coins is literally just buy up some coins that are next to each other. So you can.
That might be the better solution, possibly.
That would be.
And then what happens is you basically constrain your individual bucket to like you do it in like on your own volition, but basically imagine if like at like you basically nest out this tree, right, of like basically splitting, and at that point, you know, like you have one ETH, and then you know you can make a payment to someone else, and then you just run this like payment network over it, like on chain.
Yeah. Cool.
And all you need at that point is splitting and joining. I think that solves it cleaner. The main concern with shuffling is that like you might have to prove a lot when it comes to the Merkle proof of that shuffle transition.
Right.
I think it's doable still, but it's just like, it might be easier just to construct like a simple payment hub off of this.
Yeah.
And this doesn't necessarily have to be off chain. It can be all on chain, but you can basically do that, I think. But if you construct that, I think basically like a lot of this like scalability stuff is done in terms of like being able to do like ledger scalability at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think moving between plasma chains, I think is definitely a really open question. But in terms of at least certain types of scalability constraints, like I think it's basically effectively solved if you use this type of construction, like this plasma cash construction, I think.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just to like review some like open research questions in the plasma space. So one, of course, you just mentioned it, moving coins between plasma chains. That would be kind of nice if there's a reasonable way to do that. Another one is recovering after block withholding. That would be.
What do you mean by recovering?
That I mean like unsticking the coins after a block is withheld without necessarily revealing what that block is ever. That would be super.
Why would you want that?
Just you don't have to go back on the main chain, right?
So you're thinking about like POS type dynamics.
Yeah. I mean, that brings me to my third one, which is allowing invalid blocks.
Because do that. No, because I think that's.
It would be nice also. Okay, this is to like if it wasn't a problem to have invalid blocks, then this is. Yeah, if it wasn't like invalid blocks, then you could just have your proof of stake validators just validate that a block is available.
So what is the responsibility of the POA node? You basically punt the responsibility of the POA node to basically be a proof of existence, like literally like commitment, like vehicle. That's literally what you're proposing, right?
Yeah. And then the step after that is to replace the PLA node with a system where like pretty much anyone can just like bid to be the next
Publish.
proposer.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that construction totally works for payments.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be super cool. That would be super cool. I'm a huge fan. Let me see. What other?
So the fun part about that is basically you just like literally anyone can publish, and then no, because not everyone can publish, because what happens is you basically need to make it so that if you turn it into like a proof of existence notary, you need basically a commitment that you have block availability to the previous data. You can only build on previous data.
So here's an idea. When you challenge, and specifically when you do a challenge that's challenging that the original transaction was a double spend, then you are only allowed to use the data that comes from the most recent 2 weeks of history. So what this gives you is like basically.
But it reintroduces timing constraints.
Yeah, but well, I mean, like Plasma always has timing constraints. Like what this gives you is that an invalid block producer can't force you to like totally not use the Plasma chain anymore. It can only deny your use for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, you can just keep on like spending points again.
Yeah, but that forces you to monitor the Plasma chain rather than just monitoring the parent chain.
Right, but you always have to monitor at least part of the Plasma chain.
Yeah, just
not always. Not in Plasma Cash. Like
right, I see.
You can just watch for withdrawals of your coin. I can just sit and hodl for for as long as I like.
No, you're right. Is watching the Plasma chain like that much more onerous a requirement than watching the?
Yeah, and I think we have different instincts on. Like I would rather have as much burden as possible, as we were discussing this morning, beyond the operator, because like they're running in some data center. I'm assuming, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Like our proposal here is kind of trying to pull it in the opposite direction, so they're different.
Yeah. So right, but I think generally users are going to want to be as lazy as possible. So maintaining a ever-growing proof, like basically their private key becomes like this ever-growing set of data, which is not great for them. Whereas if the Plasma chain operator maintains it, then like. I think they're relatively well incentivized. They've gained some scale. So I don't know. So that's sort of the view. So I think to the extent it's possible that they can just monitor the Ethereum network, like that seems like the easiest thing. But I mean, monitoring the Plasma chain though could just look like polling the Plasma chain operators server once a week. So
if you are an operator running at a proof of stake network, you do have to have. Ideally, it is preferential to have full data availability. And preferentially, you only build upon blocks which have full data availability.
Right.
As an operator.
If you have a proof, right? If you have a set of blocks doing it, I'm also a little skeptical or worried about.
Actually, no. The suggestion I had doesn't work because you can just grief people by making unavailable blocks after their coins.
Ooh.
Making unavailable blocks.
After the block that some spend was contained in, and then possibly the double spend inside of that, because that just forces them to immediately exit. Otherwise, they could get hit by this like 2 week limit.
Yes.
So, what were you trying to solve with that? Like, sorry,
Basically trying to create a system where one single block being unavailable can only freeze people's money for 2 weeks instead of like freezing it forever until it's drawn.
So if a block becomes unavailable, maybe you, as the operator, you're saying an operator basically invalidates their own blocks is the goal?
No, I'm saying like a version of Plasma where different operators create different blocks, and just one of those operators creates one that's
then you have a potential like synchronicity issue, because if you have two commitments on chain building upon a prior commitment, then you don't, if there's not available data on one of them, you sort of don't know whether something has been double spent or not.
Yeah.
So
Well-
at that point, basically, I'm saying like ideally it works if it's a single chain, and then there's some agreement, and then maybe like timing wise, it gets locked in post. Let's say you take elements from Casper finality gadget, and after it's been finalized, you can't reorg, but before then you could reorg and invalidate your own blocks maybe
Right. Yeah.
up to one depth.
Yeah, like this. If you make the plasma chain into a Casper FFG like thing, then definitely.
Yeah. So I'm presuming that basically this is a very nice, good to have. I think what Carl said is like, in terms of that list, I think it's pretty interesting because what happens is like if you can do what like, the stuff Carl was talking about in terms of that list of 3 items, you can basically do like, let's say a round robin POS construction.
Yeah.
And then you basically like punt all the problems if you can do round robin POS.
Yeah, super fun. Super fun.
Well, basically, the in terms of the round robin, you only build upon the previous one if and only if you have data availability.
Yeah, exactly. And so, please, we have so many people watching this, and if you all have a great idea in your brain that can solve one of these 3 fun research problems, go to Eat Research and post it.
Yeah, I think those are the like big remaining issues, right? And I guess along the lines of like what Vitalik was like thinking about, in terms of strategies when it comes to like combining, was combining them one of your? Between plasma chains or plasma shards. Yeah, moving money. Yeah, if you can do that, that's like that's one of the big ones. That consumed like a third of this call. So. Oh man, but yeah, I don't know. Are there other elements that could be interesting? I guess. I think like optimal construction of doing like payment channel networks inside this, because that way you remove a lot of the like sharding dust, if you will.
Yeah.
And then optimal way to do the split and join. And I think David is that's a research topic that you're researching into right now, right? Oh, David, right when I talked to him, cut off. Okay. Oh, yeah, you heard. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm thinking about it.
But basically, yeah. The primary thing about splitting up within a bucket is I think it's safe to do, but the issue of if anyone redeems one of the elements in there, everyone has to work around them in a certain way. It's sort of like, oh no, I guess you're just removing a leaf. That's okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just remove a leaf, then it's clean.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Go Plasma. Woo!
Yeah.
And thank you, Dan, for coming. It's my gosh, you are awesome.
It's awesome. When you're back in New York, we should get coffee.
Yes.
Yay.
That would be so cool.
Or don't drink coffee because coffee's bad for your heart. But we should get coffee.
Oh my god, so much love. That was the subconscious one. That was
like I think this call was really interesting in terms of like, getting everyone up to speed mentally when it comes to like thinking about this problem. I think people watching this recording it's probably a little esoteric and might be confusing.
No, I believe in. Oh my God, it's Virgil.
Oh, hey, Virgil.
Yeah, I'm in the meeting now. Hey.
Hi.
We're just about to end this call, but yeah. Virgil, any final thoughts?
Wait, on what? On what?
We're about to end this call. Any final thoughts?
Oh,
this is recorded. This is the bi-weekly plasma. Are we gonna include this in the video? This might not be a good idea. This is a bit silly. Okay, good night.
Good night.
Okay. Now everyone's joining the call because it's because the timing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's okay. We'll we'll post it. It should be fun. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.